Well, let's we got another new friend. I've been doing some booking up on Bukele. This is let me grab my notes here. Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, announced via video message to Bitcoin Miami some new policy. And let's just watch this, David, because I think you might be. There's a few like interesting little moments here, so I just want to share this with everybody. So it's like Bretton Woods, but Bitcoin Miami.
It's like Bretton Woods for idiots.
Bukele, and I'm president of El Salvador. Great ideas are beautiful and have great power, but like most beautiful things, they can also be more fragile than we think. When I was a kid, we thought about the future and we were delighted by its possibilities. We couldn't wait for it to happen and be part of its creation. But now, ask almost anyone what they think about the future, and they will say something along the lines of nuclear war, climate catastrophe, hunger, pestilence, the death of life. We didn't take care of the beautiful idea that we create our own future, that we as humanity can do almost anything that we imagine. Our ingenuity.
How about solve those things that everyone's worried about?
What separates us from other species. In El Salvador, we are trying to rescue this idea and start the design of a country for the future, using the best ingredients that makes us who we are, while using sensibility to find the best examples of ideas from history and around the world.
Ideas?
I believe Bitcoin could be one of these ideas. That is why next week, I will send to Congress a bill that will make Bitcoin a legal tender in El Salvador. In the short term, this will generate jobs and help provide financial inclusion to thousands outside the formal economy.
Now, that is an interesting formulation there. Outside the formal economy. I just want to pause there because...
aren't you the president?
Well, yeah, like David Gerard, who wrote his Attack of the 400-Foot Blockchain, really good on these issues, has some good notes. Like 70% of El Salvadorian adults are unbanked. But like that could also be read as this is going to be good for people who are money laundering, right? Like that, which is really what this is going to be about. Like this isn't going to help those people like Bitcoin, but not in any way, shape, or form. This is going to appeal to a country. So just some background on Bukele. If you want to jump in here, go ahead. By the way.
Oh, all I was going to say is this unbanked kind of point with Bitcoin is so nasty, in my opinion, because people like the people who are big advocates of Bitcoin refuse to reckon with the fact that Bitcoin is an extremely unstable asset, right?
Exactly.
So if you're somebody who's already unbanked, it's like, okay, there's all these financial services and things that you can't enter into, right? But I don't think the solution is to introduce those people to a banking system, right? Something they would use to store money, store value. That's going to be going up and down all the time, like it is.
Right. Yeah. It fundamentally doesn't make sense for that purpose. And like there was an Arizona lawmaker who wanted to do this and allow people to accept taxes in Bitcoin.
Miami's that's the case too.
Right. And which is just like maybe I'm wrong. That seems just like that's good for money launderers who have money that have been pumped into Bitcoin. And like, what do you do with that? Well, you could do more crimes with it. Everyone knows that's the main application for this shit. It's just buy drugs online. That's the most famous one. But also all sorts of other criminal activity, like the Colonial Pipeline people. The DOJ reclaimed they took the ransom in Bitcoin, and the DOJ went and got that. Which tanked the price of Bitcoin because, of course, one of the big things pumping Bitcoin is criminal activity. Nobody wants to talk about that, but like that is something I think we need to foreground. Maybe we should have David Jarrett on, but this is criminals. And I want to go into Bukele a little bit. Shitty guy. So, and another thing is like $2 out of every $10 into El Salvador comes from remittances, and there's some sort of theory that this is going to be
people who aren't familiar with what that is. That's just money flowing into the country from people outside the country.
Right. And I've seen theories that he's trying to get
like if your family moves to the United States, they send money back to El Salvador. Because some people aren't familiar with that.
Right. Yeah, no, I appreciate that too. Cause I knew that, but it's nice to hear it like, somebody with a bit more familiarity with these issues reflect it back. So yeah. In October, Bukele sent soldiers into parliament attempting to force approval of loans. So basically, like, this guy's a right-wing populist, and what that means is he's spending a lot of money and not taxing rich people. And a lot of these expenses are for security. He's got a 7-part security plan, only 3 points of which have been publicly elucidated. And so the opposition was like, hey, look, you want to take out an extra $750 million for your security plans. Which, this is another thing, maybe talk about modern monetary theory. That's a much different issue in places that aren't America, where you're having to get that from the IMF, right? Mm-hmm. I just want to play this clip from last October. This is October 2nd. And ultimately, this did work. It looks, well, I'll just play this here.
We begin in El Salvador, where President Nayib Bukele sent soldiers into parliament on Sunday as he demands that lawmakers approve a loan to boost security. Despite the military presence, only 28 members of the parliament turned up to Sunday's extraordinary session, meaning it was again without a quorum to vote on the $109 million loan.
So, sending soldiers into parliament to get your spending increase, it did ultimately work. He got his spending increase immediately. There's corruption problems with his cabinet, which is unsurprising. Asking for unitemized security funds. Shock.
I wonder why this guy prefers untraceable money.
Exactly. It's because of freedom and decentralization. Yeah. And so the AG starts investigating that. Bukele runs in elections on the idea that for parliament that everything's opposition's fault, very Trump-like basically, gets a bigger majority and fires the AG, and ends up getting basically taking out this money, but there's only so much you can take out, right? Like, this is kind of the limits of right-wing populism, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you're still ultimately borrowing from the IMF, but that's expensive. So this is ultimately where he's turned to, is this basically like, let's get a whole bunch of money laundering money. And I just find it interesting that all the Bitcoin bros out there talking about really fucking hating governments, man. I really hate government authority. I hate just the coercive state. And
yeah, man.
But also, I love this fucking guy who did the laser eyes thing on his Twitter page, who sent fucking armed guards to coerce legislators to take out loans from the IMF. Like, that's your guy.
Yeah. I mean, I know people get really worked up, and I honestly, maybe I just don't have the same kind of inclination as some folks do to this kind of stuff. But this is another great example we were talking about earlier about how it's important to read, and not only just read in general, but history is important, and to not just feel like reading whatever's at the top of the stack of the contemporary community. History is important, and the right wing for a very, very long time, and by right wing I mean rich people, for a very, very long time have wanted to have a monetary system that is not controlled by the government, because the problem with the government is it has too many dirty poor people and too many people in general in it, and it's not as easy to influence, right? Versus just having something that's completely separate from a government as a way to denote value. So they've always wanted to have, and that's why, right wingers and rich people have always been pushing for other kinds of, they didn't like, for example, when the United States moved from gold to fiat, right? Because it allows the government to have a lot more control over money. And they don't want a situation like that because it doesn't allow them to be able to write their own rules and to basically be able to ignore democratic mandates and things like that. So I'm not saying everybody who uses Bitcoin or who's into Bitcoin is one of these people, but I'm trying to explain to people why there's a certain group of folks out there who find this to be a very exciting opportunity. Yeah. I, for one, just put all my cards on the table. I just don't think this is going to be going much further.
Yeah.
I don't find this to be like the future of currency or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I want to also some important note is that since 1991, El Salvador has been on USD, U.S. currency. So and so that's also they're trying to get out from under that, and that is like we said, that's it. They are in a difficult position, and just to say that Bitcoin is not the answer to that.
Well, all Bitcoin is going to do is attract another group of people to bring themselves or at least their entities into El Salvador that will have very little effect on the people on the ground in a positive sense. What I mean by that is if you're accepting this as legal tender, right, it's definitely going to attract a few people who are like true believers and also who have incredible amounts of Bitcoin to park their assets in El Salvador.
Yeah, the buy up all
Will
your
that be a
housing.
benefit to like the typical person on the ground? No. Will that be a benefit though to people who want to avoid U.S. taxes? Yes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just imagine all of a sudden some fucking Bitcoin whales start buying up all the, like it's bad enough BlackRock doing it in America. Like you have these fucking Bitcoin shitheads that literally, I'm an El Salvadorian now. I'm going to buy a hotel complex that I like, and I'll just be a little lord down there. This sucks.
That's it. It's not a good thing, man. And
Bitcoin boosters, they appeal. This isn't the first time. There's some island in the Caribbean that also did this experiment. Did not go well for them ultimately. And Bitcoin boosters, they get into ears of guys like this because this helps keep the bubble inflated. Because this is fundamentally one of the biggest effects this will have is be a propaganda talking point for all the Bitcoin people that want to sell you on it.
I just want to say this because every time we do anything about Bitcoin or blockchain or cryptocurrency in general, we get like the typical people who are really into that. And for the most part, I don't have much to say to them. But there's also like this kind of left-wing current that will say things to us on, basically like, oh, well, do you want all currency to be controlled by the U.S. government? Isn't the U.S. government an enemy, blah, 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 right? And what I say to them is the same reason that we don't want to get rid of a jury trial, right? Is that having the possibility of public control, of democratic control of these functions of the state is not something that you should be so willing to give away, because the people who want that are people who do not hold the same values as us. They do not aspire to be popular or for the people at large. They aspire to be privatized and individual. And that's essentially the goal of a lot of cryptocurrency, is to be completely separate from public control, public influence. As a socialist, you should recognize that we want to be able to exert public influence and public power over our monetary system, our value system. And I don't think that you should be mistaken. You should make the mistake of thinking that just because it's something that's not controlled by our current government, that is something that's necessarily better. Right?
Yeah. The whole like decentralized fetish is it would have been called privatized in an area that was less skeptical of capitalism. Because that's like there's no like
it is this private money.
Yeah, exactly. You're privatizing currency. Good job. Like expect something, and like even like blockchain. I was talking like, sure, like accounting, but like what societal like problems are caused by accounting really? Like is there really that much? Like plus like all this, like you look at David Dayen's Chain of Title, which is on the financial crisis, and how these companies are just lying about having the papers anyway. I guess that would fix that. But ultimately you trace this stuff back, and ownership like that is always murky. And like, unless we blockchain stuff back to the Native American tribes, somehow saying like, then if you can figure out a way to like start, firing these GPUs up to figure out how we can make amends for, exploitation of the working class, dispossession of the Native Americans, and also slavery. Maybe we could talk about like accounting, fixing the world.
And look, maybe our friends at This Machine Kills have different perspectives on these things.
I don't think so.
I don't personally have any, and maybe just because I haven't done enough, I haven't looked into it enough. I don't have any moral problem with blockchain technology, right? As a technology, people always accuse us of that. I
Right.
literally don't care about blockchain. It seems very interesting, and I could imagine that some people smarter than me, or different skill sets than me, could find very useful, could find great uses for this thing.
Right.
But what I do have a problem with is private money. And there's no way you can't dance around that this is what this is. And private money is not a new invention. It's honestly, it goes back to all the shit that we talk about when we talk about technology and capitalism, right? It's new in a certain way, right? But they go back to old forms. And private money is not something that I consider to be a building block of a socialist future. I actually find it to be a building block of a much worse,
an attack,
libertarian capitalist future than anything.